Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's SABR Elysian Fields chapter meeting. My name is Donna Muscarella, and I am the chapter's president. We're honored to have with us tonight Dan Evans. Dan is one of those people who was able to use his love of baseball to launch a career that has spanned more than 40 years. He has had decision-making roles with 5 MLB franchises, is a consultant for numerous sports and worldwide baseball-related matters, mentors the highly acclaimed Sports Management Worldwide Baseball GMN Scouting online course, serves on the SABR National Board of Directors, and is a baseball reference brand ambassador. Despite all that and more, he's made time to be with us tonight, and I am very grateful for that. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks, Donna. And Donna, congratulations and good luck to you and your leadership of the chapter. And thanks to everybody for joining us tonight.
Thank you. So let's get right into it. How'd you fall in love with baseball?
That would have to be my mom and my grandmother. My dad was a massive baseball fan, but my grandmother and mother took me out of classes when I was elementary school and took me to nearby Wrigley Field. Wrigley Field was about 2 miles away. And I went and I saw Bob Gibson face Ferguson Jenkins when I was about 7 years old at Wrigley Field. My grandmother, being just who she was, got us right behind the plate, just sweet talked a bunch of ushers, small crowd in those days. I watched the entire ball game and I was hooked. And I was just a kid. And mom never stopped. She kept taking me out of school. My principal told me later she was totally onto it. My dad fueled the history of the game. He used to say that I read the box scores and the game stories before I read books. But I've been so lucky, Donna, and all of us love the game. I mean, if we didn't love the game, we wouldn't be in SABR. We wouldn't be on this call tonight. But I was one of the lucky ones who got the opportunity to fuel that all the way through my adult years. And one of my siblings says I never grew up. Well, why? Why would you want to? I get to play games and have fun. So I'm lucky. I know it, and I appreciate the opportunity that I've had.
It's the beauty of baseball, right? It's a game, and you never have to grow up. It's a beautiful way to put it. So, were there any particular experiences, either personally or professionally, that made you love the game even more?
Ooh, 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 ooh. I'd say a couple. Can I answer a couple?
Of course.
Behind me, my background is Koshin Stadium, my favorite ballpark in the world. It's where the Hanshin Tigers play. It's where the Japan high school tournaments played annually. It's just vibrant. It's awesome. And one day I was going to that ballpark, and the Japanese national champions, world champions for Little League, were on the same train as mine. And one of them came up to me and weirdly recognized me because I've been involved with a lot of Japanese players and I do have some history in Japan. And he came up, introduced himself. And when we got off the train at the ballpark, I took a picture with the entire Little League champion team that I still have. And it's like an unbelievable moment for me. The other one I would say, probably two, would be the 99 All-Star game in Boston. I was lucky enough to be there. I went to every All-Star game for about 35 years. It was just an amazing experience. And Ted Williams came out, and I knew from people at Major League Baseball what the script was, and they got away from the script almost immediately. But I'm sitting in that ballpark, and I said to the person I went to the game with, a wonderful friend, I said, "You realize how lucky we are right now? This is incredible." And it was. And the other one, and I'm gonna cheat a little bit here, Donna. I worked with John Lalonde, one of the great scouts in the game, a Toronto Blue Jays scout, and we advanced the Texas Rangers in the playoffs. I want to say 2015 or 16. They had won 97 or 98 games, and we advanced them for 4 weeks. And we really thought we could beat them. We were a tremendous underdog, and we swept them. And on the first game, we were going to go pick up the National League after the series, but Alex Anthopoulos and Perry Manassian said, hey, stick around, stick here for game one after talking to the club, and then you can fly out tomorrow night. Well, we really had a heck of a first game. And a lot of the things that John and I had picked up on were utilized in that first game. And about the seventh inning, John, who I just love dearly, leaned into me and said, Danny boy, we just spent a month and we contributed. And it was eerie to feel that. It's one of the few things in baseball that we feel a direct result. But I think those things, I think the Field of Dreams games that I was a part of, candidly, Donna, was magical. It was weird, national anthems going on. And you're thinking, wow, this was actually my idea. This is kind of wild. But I've been very lucky. I've had probably more moments than I ever anticipated. And a lot of them is based on relationships, which I cherish more than the outcome of games.
And that, I'm kind of going out of order in my prepared questions here, but there is no question that baseball is about so much more than what happens between the lines and the relationships and all of that. So going back to the very beginning in your scouting life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who was the first player that you signed?
Wow. Don, I'm in kind of a unique position. Very rare do you start your career in the big leagues traveling with the club. And that's what I did my first 5 or 6 years. Um, at the time, I questioned whether or not I could do it. Looking back, it's the best thing I ever did because it set the bar for me across the board. I only saw big leaguers, and I only saw big leaguers that we were trying to get out or get hits against. And as a result, I think my amateur level bar was far higher than it should have been. But as a result, I kind of knew what a big leaguer looked like. I had phenomenal mentors. Down in my first 3, 4 years in the game, I had Roland Heeman, Dave Dombrowski, Bill Smith, Bobby Winkles, Charlie Lau, Tony La Russa. I had just unbelievable mentors, Don Drysdale. And as a result, those people kind of set me up to be a little tougher on players, and not dream as much and be a little bit more black and white. I think the first guy I really scouted at the amateur level was a first round pick by the White Sox. His name was Kurt Brown, a terrific kid. He was the fifth pick in the country in the '85 draft. And I watched him and I just could not see a big leaguer. And it disturbed me because I didn't have any amateur experience, but I kept seeing him play one day in a game. And I'm like, why did I think this is, why does anyone think this is a big leaguer? Which at 24, 25 years old, you say things you shouldn't say. Um, he was the only guy in the first 14 picks that didn't make it to the big leagues.
Mm.
And then from that point forward, I realized that I had a little different vibe of what a big leaguer looked like. And Donna, it's much off the field and mental preparation and the ability to handle anxiety. And I think I got that from traveling with a big league team for 5 or 6 years, recognizing that, most people fail not because of their talent, but because of their inability to handle anxiety.
Yeah.
So I saw a lot of big leaguers that I thought were going to be great that didn't. And it's an acquired taste. You start to see guys and you go, no, I've seen this guy a lot. This kind of guy doesn't make it. I remember the first one I really whiffed on was Von Hayes, who was a great, great player in the early '80s. I think the Phillies traded 5 guys for him. I thought it was a great trade. And he just never really became that guy. But then down at the '84 Olympic team, and I'm really dating myself right now, I got to see them play 3 times in person because our team, the White Sox, just happened to travel to see 4 or 5 exhibition games that the Olympic team was playing against somebody. So I got to see Palmero, Clark, Larkin, BJ Surhoff, and I
That was a
developed
heck of a team.
opinions. Yes, it was amazing. And they were playing in front of full houses. It was an exciting time for the Olympics. And I had to write reports on each one of them. And I had very distinct opinions about guys. And I started to realize, hey, I might have a shot to be able to do some amateur guys. But at the same time, Donna, those guys were on the brink of being first and second round draft picks. So, candidly, the first guy that made it to the big leaguers was Ozzie Guillen. And Jerry Krause and I did a lot of homework on Ozzie Guillen. We were looking at 6 different shortstops to be our everyday shortstop in 1986. And when he showed up to spring training, I kind of thought, boy, I hope I'm right. Jerry Krause is the guy making the call, but I'm helping. And I think Ivan Calderon, who I'd seen in the Winter League in 84, 85, somewhere in there, made a trade with the White Sox. And then, candidly, on the international side, it would be Ichiro and it would be Shohei Ohtani, who I just saw and said, okay, these are big league, big guys.
We're going to talk more about Ichiro in a bit. I want to remind everybody there will be time for Q&A at the end. You can throw your questions in the comments if you want, or you can just raise your hand when we get to the Q&A and ask your question on camera. So in every aspect of life, paying it forward is a worthy effort. And I know that that's something that you live by pretty much on a daily basis from what I know of you. So you started your professional baseball career as an intern with the Chicago White Sox. So let's talk about Kim Eng and the opportunity you had to give her an intern experience with the White Sox.
Oh gosh, what a great question. And I alluded to the mentors that I had, Donna, early on. The most unique part about my internship that would never happen today is I was brought into every meeting from the onset as an intern. I remember telling my father, like my third day, why are these guys bringing me into these high end meetings? And I finally had the guts to ask, and Roland Heeman, a truly great man, and it's really amazing that, now we have the Roland Heeman Award with SABR, and I get to oversee that award. So it came full circle for me. Roland said, how are you going to learn if you don't know what it looks like? I think that really helped me the rest of my career because I envisioned every intern having the same opportunity as me. So here comes Kim Eng, just a wonderful graduate at University of Chicago, reigning captain of the softball team. We interviewed about 75 people, and I just loved what she brought to the table. She was amazing. And Donna, I don't know if you asked a really great question. I don't think I've ever said this publicly, but we had a very progressive owner, the number 2 owner of the White Sox, who dabbled in baseball operations, was a great man, a war hero, a distinguishedly honored Korean War veteran who was in Ted Williams's platoon. And his name was Jack Gould. And I went in his office after the interviews were all over. And I said, Jack, are we ready as an organization to be aggressive and be progressive like no other team and bring a young woman in? It was unheard of in 1990, Donna. There's no way you would even think about it. And he said, well, why do you ask? And I said, because I think she's the one. I think she's the right person. I just don't know as an organization, are we ready for this? Jack Gould's credit, Jack said, well, we better be. And if anyone isn't, they won't be here next year. And he said, I support it. I'd love to meet her. So I brought her in for lunch, and she's amazing. And when we were all done, Jack said, well, why haven't you hired her? What I saw in Kim Eng was someone who challenged me. Why? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? I'll never forget, she had these legal pads, these yellow legal pads she would carry everywhere. And I think it's more Kim Eng seizing the opportunity and being brilliant than at anything me recognizing her skills. I gave her the platform, sure, but she made the most of an incredible opportunity. More than anything, I think it's the culture of the White Sox in the early 90s We were vibrant, we were young, we were progressive, and we were ready for Kim Eng as much as Kim Eng was ready for the moment. I got to hire her a second time. After her internship was over, I actually hired her before it was over. She worked with me for about 5 years. Then I hired her back as the assistant GM of the Dodgers. She was a completely different person. She had 4 World Series rings by that point. And candidly, Donna, I got to see the finished product that I had bet on 10 years earlier, and it was a joy. She's an extremely talented person, and I'm so glad to be a fragment of her career.
You said that she often challenged you. Did she ever come at you with perspectives that you hadn't considered before, or was it more of, tell me more because I want to learn?
Yes to both. Great question, Donna. She challenged me, and I think I was young enough to, not be arrogant about my decision making. I really wasn't set in my ways. I was growing into a role as the number 2 guy with the organization at an age way too young. I was in my, mid to late 20s at that point, and that's a little dangerous to have a lot of responsibility. But I also loved that she constantly asked, why? What was your process? What did you do? And then she threw out things analytically that were amazing. She was very computer literate. She looked at me. We were preparing our own arbitration cases. So she said, I can help you with this. And I can do some things computer wise that might change the way you approach things. She did some studies on scouts. She's fascinating. And I think she made me better just by challenging me. And at that stage of my career, I didn't look at it as anything but my ability to perhaps get better and lead better. And looking back, I'm grateful that she didn't play the quiet, subservient, introverted route, because I don't think I would have benefited from it.
So you were able to see something in Kim really early on that we've all now been able to benefit from. And I think there are some people that you just know at the beginning that they're going to be superstars, Hall of Famers, maybe even. So was that the case when you started paying attention to Ichiro?
Yeah, no doubt. The first time I saw him play, Donna, I think he's the most unique player I've ever seen. He's about 5'9", in his prime, about 160, 65 pounds, wiry, limber, um, not what you would expect if you looked at his baseball reference page. You see his numbers on baseball reference, and you would think to be able to be as durable as he was, I mean, he was incredibly durable, Donna. His first 15 years in the big leagues, he was averaging about 158 or 9 games a year. And that wiry little body just blew me away. First time I saw him was on video. A scout from a Japanese team showed me video long before he came over. And I went, whoa, this guy's, I mean, Donna, scouting is a tool grading element. So you're looking for a 20 to 80 scale, with 80 being elite, of which you seldom see an 80. You just don't. I saw like 5 or 6 in one player and couldn't believe it. But at the time, Donna, there was an inherent bias because there had never been a Japanese position player in the big leagues ever. He was the first. Up to that point, you had Murakami in the early 60s with the Giants, which is a story in itself, but it was all pitchers. And all of a sudden, this multi-dimensional guy was knocking on the door of the big leagues. So I sought to get more and more information. And as I got it and as I saw it, I thought, folks, this is 80 bat, 80 speed, 80 glove, 80 arm, 80 preparation. And when I say 80, I mean 80 love of the game. Just a passion for the sport that I don't think I've ever seen anybody top. And when I saw all those tools, I thought, if we release the inherent bias about Japanese position players, what we will have is an extraordinary talent. What's really strange, Donna, is that he changed the Japanese game by coming to the States
Mm.
because everybody watched his games against North American MLB opponents, and Japanese players started to mimic the way American players or MLB players played. So you didn't see guys who looked like Ichiro. Aoki is the only one who kind of looked like Ichiro, but he grew up watching Ichiro. Now all of a sudden you saw a whole generation of the two Matsuis and other really great position players who saw the North American game and emulated those guys. So Ichiro's approach was completely unique in the way that he was the only one who did it, and he's the only one in Japan for the last 25 years. And I think that's the most remarkable transition I've seen in the game.
Two of the things that always have, not always, but for a long time have struck me about Ichiro. Number one is you alluded to his 80 love of the game or respect for the game, because love of the game and respect for the game don't always go hand in hand, right? But his respect for the game is just fascinating to me. The second thing is how you say he's an 80 in all these other ways and how much he holds back. He could be a power hitter if he wanted to be a power hitter. He chooses not to be a power hitter. And I think that goes back to the whole idea of respect for the game. And I am more valuable to my team by playing the game this way and not that way, even though, the home run guys maybe undeservedly so get more of the accolades.
Don, I was really lucky. I got to work with the Mariners for about 5 years, and I was with Ichiro a ton. Okay. And I got to take our relationship to the next level. He was the most prepared player mentally and physically that I've ever been around. And I've been around some truly great players, guys who were really dialed in: Tom Seaver, Carlton Fisk, Eric Gagne. I'm thinking of guys who were just dominant, really great players. And Ichiro would get to the ballpark at about 11:30 every day. We got to the point where we gave him a clubhouse key at Safeco so he could not just destroy the time management of our clubhouse guy, Ted Walsh. And he would come, he'd stretch, he'd hit off the machines, he would do all of his game preparation with video. And then 7 hours later, he was the best player on the field in so many different areas. But what's really cool about him, Donna, and I think will be amazing as of a couple weeks, is Ichiro's affinity for the Hall of Fame and baseball history is so stunning. I mean, he knows the history of the game like few people, not players, people. He has been to the hall numerous times. He has done a lot of homework on guys. So I think when he gets inducted next July, you're going to have one of the greatest ambassadors for baseball in the world. But also, what he's going to do, Donna, is his affinity and love, I would say obsession about the game, is going to bring an entire nation to Cooperstown and have them enabled and absolutely jacked about coming to Cooperstown, not just to see someone who looks like them in the Hall of Fame, but someone who loves the game's history as much. And I think it's going to be one of the great components about him coming to Cooperstown.
I think it has the potential to be, people talk about certain induction ceremonies and how amazing they were. I think this one, never mind the numbers, the atmosphere is going to be off the charts
No
amazing, and
question. No
I
question. I
cannot
wouldn't
I
miss it.
cannot wait.
Yeah, I wouldn't miss it, Donna. I think it's going to be the
Yeah.
most extraordinary induction, probably since Williams talked about page in front of the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I know that Ichiro is often, and I believe this is out of respect for the game, is often hesitant about speaking in English because he's afraid that he may unintentionally say something that will cause disrespect. How do you think he's going to handle his induction speech?
Well, I hope he does a lot of it in Japanese because I think it'll be great for the worldwide love of the game. And there's a, you know, there's a country in Japan that is obsessed with baseball, like no other country is obsessed with any sport in the world. It's a stunning experience to be over there. Their love of the game is so pronounced. It rejuvenates me every time I'm there because it's therapeutic. You realize how much fun it is to go to a baseball game when you go to Japan and watch any game, not just a game, any game. So I hope he does a lot of it in Japanese. I guarantee you he'll do a lot of it in English too. And I think it'll be wonderful for our sport. We've never heard Japanese spoken on that platform before. I think it's gonna make the exhibit that Tom Schieber, Josh Rawich, and all the Hall of Fame people have worked on, the Japanese exhibit. It's going to be unbelievable. But I think it will also bring people on a mission from Japan to come to Cooperstown and celebrate the game that both regions of the world love.
I'm looking forward to that exhibit. I'm sad to see Hallowed Ground go, right? Sacred Ground, Hallowed Ground. You know what exhibit I'm talking about.
I do.
But this is going to be, I think that it's going to potentially change the demographic of visitors to the Hall of Fame in perpetuity.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. And you
it's
know, Donna, he's had an amazing career. I mean, he was a great player in Japan.
Mhm.
He didn't come over till age 27.
Yeah.
Look what he did here from 27 forward. It's equivalent to some of the really great Negro League players who weren't able to play until their late 20s,
Mhm.
early 30s. But what he did is stunning, stunning. Gold gloves, all-star games, batting championships, over 3,000 hits. I saw his 3,000th hit at Coors Field. I just happened to be in Colorado that day. I just think, it's hard to poke holes in his Hall of Fame candidacy. And I think that in itself is a testament about how great he truly was over that 20-year window.
Yeah, that's something that he came over at 27, but he was a young 27. I remember being very fortunate to be at the All-Star game in Seattle in 2001 when it was Ichiro mania to the nth degree, and I had only witnessed it from afar on the opposite coast, and to be there in the middle of it and see this rookie mania for this 27-year-old kid was just, and then to see him play in person. TV just didn't do it justice. I mean, the game is beautiful no matter
Yeah.
how you see it, but there's certain things that you just can't pick up on a TV broadcast. And it
And
was
Donna, I
just,
think we got lucky, and I'll tell you why I say that. I think 10 years earlier, we didn't have the amount of baseball available to digest that we had in 2001. The game was starting to stream, there was starting to be direct TV channels. You could watch games. And he also had a great broadcaster, a future Hall of Famer, Dave Niehaus, who was mesmerized by Ichiro. So early in his time with Seattle, he throws a guy out at third base from deep right field, and Niehaus went nuts. And Niehaus was a respected, longtime superstar behind the mic. And when people heard him starting to gush, it was amazing. I went and saw him play maybe 45 days into his big league career. And I saw Dave before the game. And I said, "So what do you think?" He said, "He's amazing." He said, "He gets me out of my seat every single night." And he said, "Did you see this coming?" And I said, "Yeah, I did. I really did." And Dave said, Danny, early in spring training, we had people doubting. Well, Donna, I had a really high ranking member of a big league organization say to me, hey, there's no way this guy's going to succeed. And I looked at him and I said, you better really be careful about who you say that to. This guy, I've seen a ton. This guy's got a chance to be the MVP, a superstar. And he goes, nope, no way. I saw that guy about 2 months in to his first season. And he said to me, you don't tell anybody that story. I said, not using your name, but I tell a lot of people that story.
Yeah.
And I think, Donna, I said it earlier, I think there was inherent bias. Much like Otani being a two-way player, people just, take the easy way out and said there's no way a guy can come over here and be an impact player from Japan. And, when you say things like that, how can you possibly be right when the guy has that talent level?
Yeah. There's a little fun little aside I'll give people a little nudge to see a film when the opportunity comes up, hopefully in the next couple of months. There's a film called The Diamond King that actually had a screening at SABR 52. It's about Dick Perez and his career and his life, and there's some behind the scenes stories in there, and one of them is about Ichiro Suzuki. It's a fun little story. I'm only going to say that. See the film, you won't regret it. So let's step away from your life in Major League Baseball and talk about your work with sports management worldwide, where you're helping another generation of baseball dreamers achieve their goals.
Donna, I'm really lucky, and I know it. I don't get my opportunity without the great mentors I had early in my career, on and off the field. I had people who weren't afraid to call me out, saying, "Hey, you can't dress like that on the road. You've got to go upstairs and change." Or Don Drysdale saying to me, "You should never be on the bus. You should be at the field long before the bus gets there." Stuff like that were great. And there was one point about 12 years ago, Roland Heeman and I were in the lobby of the winter meetings. And he said, "Danny, it's time for you to start giving back." And I said, I do. What do you mean? He says, "No, I mean really giving back." And he said, "You were so lucky to get the opportunity you did and you parlayed it." So I walked around the winter meetings for honestly the rest of the day, kind of, we've all been there. You're at a convention and you're anywhere but. I was just kind of swirling. And I snuck into a meeting of sports management worldwide because I wanted to listen to Pat Gillick. Pat Gillick's one of my heroes, one of my idols. And I got to work with him in Seattle, but I couldn't fawn all over him because we were supposed to be peers, like I'm a peer to him. Give me a break. And a gentleman came over and said, "Excuse me, this is a closed conference. You have credential on, but what is that?" And I said, "Well, I'm the special assistant to the GM of the Mariners." And he says, "Well, that's great and everything, but this is a paid conference." And I said, "Well, that's like my hero." And he's about to talk. And he goes, "Really? Okay, that's really cool. That's why you're here." And I said, "Yes." And we're all done. Lynn Lashbrook, who owns Sports Management Worldwide, said, "Let's have lunch." So I pushed back my departure and I met with him after the winter meetings were over. He and his wife, Liz, are great friends. And they told me they were looking to hire somebody to teach a class, baseball, getting into the game. And I said, "Wow, that's fascinating." And I thought, there's my opportunity. So I started teaching the class about 12 years ago. And Donna, one of my favorite memories of doing it, and I've got 460 alums that have worked or are working in the game. So that for me is like, I'm thrilled. That's my legacy. But the time difference in Japan when I would travel there was always a challenge because I used to teach on Saturday mornings, and at midnight Saturday, I had to teach the class. Well, I was in Osaka, Japan. The game went extra innings. I took a bullet train back. I got off at Tokyo Station, and sure enough, it's 10 minutes to 12. and there's no way I can set up this virtual in time. I can't do it. So I decided to sit in Tokyo Station, which basically closes about 12:15, 12:30 till 5 o'clock the next morning. And a security guard came up to me and said in Japanese, "No, sir, you can't do this." And I speak some Japanese and I said, "Well, I'm teaching a class on how to get into baseball." And he goes, "Oh, I love baseball." He sat down next to me for the next 2 hours and we just talked about the game as I was teaching the class. And then he walked me out at the end. To this day, a good friend. And it's one of my favorite moments because it was so unpredictable. I could never get to my hotel in time, and this guy bailed me out. And my image, on the screen was really, pristine. Everything looked good, but around me, I'm just sitting on a concrete floor with a security guard right next to me. And in Japan, you don't even need a security guard. This guy is such a diehard baseball guy. Whenever I would talk to him from that point forward, I would always say, "Oh, you should come on my class Saturday night." And he always did. So it was really fun, but I'm thrilled what we've evolved into, Donna. We sell out our class every 8 weeks. Hank Jones and I teach the class. Hank and I work together with the Dodgers. But to have hundreds of alums working in the game is so gratifying, is so thrilling, and candidly, it makes it all worthwhile because you see people starting their careers, and I'm there to nurture them, to help them, and as they progress to get big roles, which some of them already have, it's really fun to see them at the winter meetings or get a text when they say, "Hey, how would you handle this if you were me?" And I've done almost every role in the game and I help them and I love helping them. So it's been an amazing experience, one that I'm really glad that I've had, and I never plan on giving it up until I can't do it anymore.
Have you seen any of the names of your students show up in a press release about a signing of a big major leaguer yet?
I have, I have, and it's an amazing experience. And, like Trey Rose is one of my proudest success stories. And he was just named the director of baseball operations for the Pirates about a month ago. We were so emotional back and forth in a text and then a phone call. And then at the winter meetings, it was one of the longest bro hugs of all time. Just because I remember when he started and he didn't know what he was getting into. And now he's this really accomplished, polished guy. But what I love are the people from different backgrounds. I've taught people from over 40 countries, um, people in all sorts of different roles now, different linguistic abilities. It's amazing seeing people from all these different walks of life getting under the same umbrella and now having the career they sought in baseball. I love it. And Donna, honestly, now I do it on Wednesday nights. I absolutely love my Wednesday nights. My dog here, Ida, comes and sits next to me and occasionally comes over and looks at the gallery view. We always have a huge turnout, and I'm always waiting for her to woof. But I think she just wants to hear more about spin rates and how to use a stopwatch best. And, she just wants to learn more about the game just like me.
Uh, Last question before we go to Q&A.
Mhm.
How have you seen the interest or the focus of your students change over the past, let's say, 10 years? Are they, you mentioned spin rate. Are there still the old school crew and that are about not just the binder, but also what you see with your eyes and feel with your gut, or is everybody moved away from that?
Oh, that's fabulous. What a great question. I've seen the evolution of the game and its technology leak into the people who come to take my class. I have 25 to 30 people every 8 weeks. And sure, there's still some old school because old school's good. It worked for a long time. I'm a blend guy, Donna. I always felt my job is to get it right. So I want as much information as you give me, regardless from the source. I'll take, I'm an old school scout, but I was a techie guy from the start in Major League Baseball. I was a pioneer in analytics and technology. So from the day I began, I always meshed those worlds. Well, what I try to teach my students is to have that same philosophy, because that way you can relate to any part of the game and it gives you a better chance of getting things right. But what's really fascinating are all the different cultures, languages, backgrounds who assemble every Wednesday night in our class and have, you know, some real interesting concepts about what they see and what they know. It helps me. It keeps me relevant, keeps me totally involved in the game, because I never know what to expect from them. And their questions have evolved with the game. I find it fascinating. I mean, we spend an entire class on spin rate. And 10 years ago, spin rate did not exist. So it's fun. And my role and my job is to get them ready for that first interview so they blow away their opposition and get that first opportunity.
I, I I know your passion for the game, and I'm sure, and your passion is contagious, and I feel better about the future of the game knowing that there are a bunch of little Dan Evanses running around, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and they
Because
and they run around the SABR Analytics conference. They run around various things that I do, and what I really love, Donna, is it helps me still think young. It challenges me to not be set in my ways. And, when they ask me a question, I try to give them a legit answer. And if I don't know, I tell them, hey, just wait a second. And I usually text one of my friends in the game right during the class, and I'll say, why do you do that? So I think the fun thing is, yeah, there's a lot of little Dan Evanses, but that's kind of redundant. I'm only 5'8". So I think, what we have is we have a segment coming into the game that I've helped prop up and get that first opportunity. And oh my gosh, Donna, I'm so grateful for that opportunity.
And I am going to use that as a springboard into this question. I am tremendously grateful for the role that you played in the Field of Dreams game, because that was I wasn't there in person, but oh my gosh, did I feel like such a little kid with that. So with that, we've got a question from Robert Komorowski, and I hope I said that right, Robert. Dan, could you explain how the Field of Dreams game came about?
It was really fun. I was consulting for the Field of Dreams, um, which was actually an homage to my mom and dad, because they went there and they saw it filmed. And my mom, as she was passing away, kind of begged me to call this guy back who owned the field, to help him. So, Robert, to fully answer your question, threw an idea out at Major League Baseball, um, had the support of people in the game, people in the community, and it's one of the most magical two games I've ever seen. I mean, it was honestly unbelievable, Robert. To take a town of 4,100 people and put 9,000 people in a ballpark, and the largest TV audience in the last 20 years of a regular season game on consecutive years, it was astonishing. And to be a part of it, start to finish, both times, Kathy and I the second game was about the sixth inning, and we were standing in the aisle with the farmer, Andy Ray, who is magical. He's just a great dude. And I said, can you believe this? And he and Kath at the same time said, oh yeah, we believe it. We've been living this for a while. And I said, yeah, but never forget this moment. Because Robert, the cool thing was, like in the first game, the whole Yankee bullpen is playing catch with a bunch of fans on the Field of Dreams site. and nobody knows where the heck they are. The game's already starting, and the players, the coaches, the staff loved it. I remember, I mean, I'm really lucky. I've got relationships already existing. Joey Votto saying to me, Danny, you got to take me to the back. Um, you know, David Ross, who was managing the Cubbies at the time, was a player I drafted with the Dodgers. And he goes, hey, can we take a quick ride around? Things like that. Having Marty Brennaman in the stands going, Danny, I can't believe this. This is ridiculous. And then, sitting there with Frank Thomas, who was one of the owners of the field in our second year, and Frank leans into me and goes, can you believe this? Can you really believe this? And I said, yeah, isn't this amazing? And Robert, I want you to know, for somebody who was there start to finish, it was as fun for me as it was for you, because I made sure it was. It was an absolute, the only part I didn't like was divvying up the tickets in year two, because year one was such a robust success. It was so hard for me to allocate the right amount of tickets for people who mattered to the field and friends. And, aside from that, it was one of my greatest times in baseball.
Well, from one Chicago guy to another, I have to thank you. I didn't make it down there, but it was quite the experience watching it on television. So thank you again from an old
What
White
high
Sox
school,
fan.
Robert? Where'd you go?
Well, high school, I went to Blue Island Eisenhower. Grew up in Blue
Us
Island.
Chicagoans, folks, this is how we do it. It's what high school did you go to? He's a Blue Island guy. I'm a Lane Tech guy.
Go Cardinals.
I love it. Thanks, Robert.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Robert. Dixie, you're up.
Hello, Dan. Thanks very much for doing this tonight. It's been great. When
You're
you were
welcome,
telling,
Dixie.
when you were
Thanks for
telling the
participating.
story, when you were telling the story about Roland Heeman taking you to that meeting, you didn't have to say anything after saying Roland Heeman.
Ah,
We knew what the
it's
rest
the
of it.
best.
My question is, the first hour, if you can recall what happened, the first hour that you were no longer Dan Evans, baseball fan, street urchin, that you were Dan Evans, baseball fan working for Major League Baseball. What was that like?
Oh my gosh, that honestly, Dixie, that's a phenomenal question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. To make things really, to put things in perspective, they didn't have enough seats. So I sat on the floor in the corner, and I thought it was appropriate because I knew it didn't matter. Okay, I'm literally the fly on the wall, 20 years old, a junior in college, looking for 3 credit hours. That's all I was doing. Okay. And they started talking about responsibilities in spring training, which, Dixie, I never knew existed. I didn't know. You bust this up. They were allocating the first 10 days, their game plan, who's going to have the priority, trying to make the club over who, which guys are we going to try to move, who this year we need to market externally so we can improve our ball club. LaRussa, 36, 37 years old, basically brand new to the game, so good to me. And I think it was because I was a pre-law major and I was so close in age to him. But Dixie, I'm sitting there going, these guys know so much more than I do about the game. And when I was all done, to share with you, Tony says to me, Danny, I like you. You seem like a good kid. He said, the key for you is shut the hell up and don't ever say a word until you're ready to have your opinion heard. And I said, yeah, but he goes, no, it'll benefit you. You'll hear how to frame things. You'll hear how to evaluate things. And Dixie, I swear to God, in those meetings, I didn't say squat for like a year and a half. And the day I did, I got this look from him. And I knew what he was saying without being verbal. But Dixie, I remember I came home that night and I remember saying to my father, Dad, we think we know a lot about the game. It's ridiculous what these guys know. And he just said, all right, here's my tip. take notes and sponge and ask questions afterward. What did you mean? What did that mean? And I know most of us don't feel comfortable doing that, but luckily I wasn't set in my ways yet. And luckily I had the right people to ask. You talk about a foundation, Dixie. I walked away from that first maybe 2 weeks going, oh my God, I'm around unbelievable people. I'm going to sponge like you've never sponged before.
Thank you.
Great question.
Excellent question. Molly.
First of all, Dan, thank you so much. Not only for being a major force in helping to create our chapter, but for this great presentation. And my question to you is, who was your favorite person to scout?
Oh, wow. First of all, Molly, thanks for the kind words. I think the chapters in New England and New Jersey are vibrant now. It's just awesome. And I'm so proud how SABR in general, as a board of director, I've seen it grow. And we are so vibrant now under Scott Bush and Mark Armour. I'm just thrilled to be a board member. I really am. The player that I think I enjoyed the most, do you mean to take a chance on, or that I just loved watching play?
Either one.
Wow. I would say it's two guys. I'd say it's Ohtani, who to this day I'm mesmerized by. I saw him as an 18-year-old and went, this guy is going to be, and my report wrote it, I thought he was going to be the greatest player in the history of the game, the most unique player talent-wise I'd ever seen. And I got pushed aside by a couple people, and I didn't care because I knew I felt that way. And luckily, I was around some great leadership in Toronto with Alex Anthopoulos and Perry Manassian, and they didn't squelch me, and they said, no, keep believing that. The other one, and it might surprise you, it's a little different, Teoscar Hernandez, who I was sent on about 2 hours notice to travel across the country to see play for a deal that was imminent, and he wasn't on a list that I was given. We were making a trade, and I was there to see like 6 or 7 different guys and pick that guy. I got there in time to see BP, infield. I got to see the first 5 innings of the game, and I called our general manager and I said, I've got the guy. Don't muck it up. Don't ask for second guy. I think it's Teoscar Hernandez. And he said to me, well, he's not even on our list. I said, you didn't tell me I had to pick a guy off the list. You told me to take the player, recommend the player I like the most. He was effervescent. He worked his butt off in BP. Everybody in the team liked him. He's the first guy out. He warmed up with a professional manner and then put on a show in the first game of the doubleheader. So this party on the other side, a future general manager, said to me, seriously? And I said, I'm not backing off. This is the guy I would want. And he goes, you do him straight up? And I said, straight up. About 4 years later, I saw him in the All-Star game at Coors Field. I was rooting like hell for him in the home run derby this year. And when he got the big hit in that 5-run rally over the Yankees, I couldn't forget being in Omaha and really sticking my neck out. The other one for me is Felix Hernandez, who as a 17-year-old in A-ball, I called Bill Bavasi in like the 3rd inning and said, let's just rush this guy to the big leagues. And he said, Danny, he's 17. I said, I don't care. I said, isn't every player equipped with only so many pitches in his arm? I'd rather bring him to the big leagues early. Little did I know at 32, he'd be done. But I'll tell you, Molly, I've had guys I've missed on, but those are the guys that I went, oh, wow.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. I've also had some other guys that I said, oh, wow, that didn't turn out to be who I thought they were going to be.
Hey, we all have our flops, right?
Absolutely.
That's part of the learning curve.
My dog chases bunnies and doesn't get all of them.
There you go.
Stephen Meyerson wants to know, Dan, have you thought about an autobiography of your experience in baseball?
Yeah, I have actually, Steve. That's a good question. Um, I would. I think I've been very lucky to be around some really interesting and unique situations. I mean, Michael Jordan playing in the minor leagues, being around Tom Seaver and Carlton Fisk, um, just having relationships with people I never would have imagined. And even things like being at the Great Wall of China and going, I can't believe that little white ball took me all the way over here. So yeah, I would. If I wrote what I'd like to write, I'd have to make sure that I was okay never being completely in the game again, because I'd probably tell a few stories that maybe, weren't exactly the most warm and fuzzy memories, but candidly, yes, I've been lucky, and I'd love to share that someday.
I look forward to reading it. Mary Shea from Milwaukee asks, did you see any of the Japanese women play? Their national team is the best in the world, but not sure how popular they are in Japan.
Great question. I have seen a ton of females playing baseball in Japan. I immersed myself in the Pacific Rim over the last 25 years and tried to become as expert as I could. And I didn't stop there. I went absolutely crazy and obsessed with the game all over the Pacific Rim. So, yes, I have seen the women. There's unbelievable level of baseball over there by women. The high school level of baseball is better than anything you would ever see in North America. But I think it's extraordinary, Donna. It's a great question. I believe it was Mary, right? Um,
Yes.
there's a young woman out of Japan who is just phenomenal. I mean, stunningly talented, a pitcher. And she's been celebrated in a lot of the stuff that's done with the International Women's Baseball Group that's led by Kat and Leslie. And I just think she's amazing. And I think in my gut that the first woman to play in the big leagues is not that far away. I think it's no more than 10 years away. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's a Japanese woman because they are so precise in their preparation and so good on fundamentals that they can overcome some of their physical characteristics that maybe would inhibit other players.
For those who have an interest in learning more about women in baseball and the Japanese game, I highly recommend. SABR has wonderful resources, don't get me wrong, but if you have the opportunity to see Her, Be Her, Gene Fruth and Jeff Idelson's new film, it's
Fantastic.
wonderful. And
Sure.
it talks about not just baseball in the States, but baseball on international level. Highly recommended. Alec, you're up.
Hey, thank you, Dan. It's so inspiring, and really, it's only a little bit about baseball. It's about giving back, and that's so cool, I thought. I would say that as a Mariners fan, the Teoscar saying that the batter's box was screwed up, and that's why he couldn't hit here, I do find to be perplexing, but you know him better than I. I do have a question. I guess I would say it's amazing that you're mentoring all these folks, but I guess I would have a point that maybe you can react to, and then a question. The point is that I think what would make you successful in 1982 might not be exactly the same thing that would make you successful in 2025. I mean, some things would be and some things would not. And so, I mean, so the role of money, the role of numbers and that sort of thing. So I guess your perspective on that would be interesting. If like a clone of Dan 1980 came back today, like would they be as successful as you've been? Maybe is the question. And then the second question is, there are probably 6 teams a year, some of whom you've worked for, who are poorly run at the ownership level, right? And so no matter how good your mentees could be, going to those places would in no way be as helpful. I mean, it could be helpful as the first career run, but like how do you think about the interaction with the opportunity with what you know to be like a tight-fisted owner or some crazy family situation or things like that that would clearly impede their ability to succeed?
Alec, a couple of great questions from my favorite city in the United States. Um, I'm going to go with the second question first. I think teams get in their own way. They promote from within. They don't hire new ideas or people from the outside. Owners don't have enough of awareness sometimes as a result because they don't hear other ways of doing things. Those teams every year are destined to watch TV in October and not participate. They don't have new thoughts. They don't try new things. And I think, Alec, it's candidly, I think that it's self-inflicted pain. I don't feel sorry for those teams. To fully answer your question, I try to steer my students away from those teams because I don't think they get better and have a good foundation early in their career. They'll be better suited to help fix that organization in time, but their voice isn't heard in those organizations. And they're very exclusive instead of inclusive. And that's part of the reason why they are always spiraling and always below the Mason-Dixon line. I just think they're, they don't have aspirations of being great. They have aspirations of breathing. And to me, the sport it rewards seizing the moment and have it not being risk averse. And I think those teams are so risk averse that they never have a chance to be great. The second question was your first, and I thought it was phenomenal. You're so right. The Dan Evans who walked into the White Sox offices in February of '81, a 20-year-old kid with a pre-law background in communications, political science minor. I could write like hell. I came from a lower middle class background, which helped me immensely because I just didn't watch the clock. I busted my ass because my mom and dad did and handed that to me. I think my stick-to-itiveness and my persistent way and my inquisitive side helped me immensely. I had no sports management background. I was, a basketball dude at DePaul University who was around practice all the time. I had Coach Ray Meyer and I had the media around all the time. But Alec, I had no aspirations of being a general
Were you the
manager.
reason they crapped out there in '81 or whatever that was? That was around you were around that time, right?
Yeah, the strike hit. The strike hit the day before my internship ended.
No, but I mean that DePaul,
And
some of the DePaul like losing at the top seed. There was some like
we did.
NCAA
We
dumpster
got to the Final Four my first year, Alec. I got to see Magic and Larry play against each other, which was unbelievable. And then the next 2 years, my classmates and some of them really great friends, we lost in the first round. And I think it helped me, Alec. And I'll tell you why. I became realistic about sports. I realized if you're not ready to win, you can't. But I look back at the guy who started and the character traits, I think they'd still be really valuable. But I think the background and the awareness is what I try to teach today. I alluded to it earlier about spin rates, knowledge of the game, awareness of all the social and all the sites to go to. None of that existed when I walked in. I remember being the first person to bring a computer into Fenway Park and everybody looking at this Apple IIe and going, what do you do? How do you do this? And now I'm thinking, I carry my phone around and it's got everything that I really need. And it blows me away that that was such a novel thing at Fenway. And nobody ever thought, how do we get these trunks upstairs? So, Alec, I had to push these 150-pound crates all the way up the ramps of Fenway. And I used to dread getaway day at Fenway Park because I was going to run somebody over if those crates got out of the way. So I had all these bands that you use to work out with, just trying to brace the damn thing. And now I look back and I go, that was a completely different time. I think it would also be difficult to start today with the opportunity because the size of the staff, we had 19 full-time front office people. Now you have that in each department. So I got a chance to find out all about the various departments and have relationships and awareness, which as I got to be a decision maker, I knew how things worked, which I think is one of the most important thing about being a leader is how do things get done? Great question.
We've got two more that hopefully we can get to quickly because I want to be respectful of those, but I also want to be respectful of your time, Dan. So in the chat, John Alcamo asks, Dan, what do you think of Chris Getz, the GM for the White Sox, and what do you think the future of the organization holds?
Well, the White Sox are in a really bad spot right now. They are the worst team in baseball history. I know some people will argue, there's teams from the early 1900s. I just think until segregation, the game you can't really evaluate it as well as you'd like. And I think the White Sox, I think, stubbed their own toe. The reason they're so bad is because their decision-making has been bad for an extended period. I know Jerry Reinsdorf extremely well, had a great chat with him at the winter meetings. He's a terrific friend, a good person. I just think Chris Getz has got a really difficult task. He's part of the problem because his player development has been so poor for so long. And now that he's the general manager, it's like his work is right in front of him. I think the White Sox are going to be hard pressed to be a good team for the next few years. And I think candidly, that job would probably be better suited for somebody with extensive experience because it's going to take different ideas and it's going to take an assembly of collaborative ideas from a lot of different backgrounds. And you don't have that at that stage of his career. You just don't. I wish him well. I could never root against the White Sox, but I just think he's in such a bad spot.
Mark Hoyle in the most awesome baseball collectibles room in the
It is.
world.
So,
Mark, seriously, that's incredible. And I see the Fisk. I think it's behind you over your right shoulder. I think what I'm looking at, but that is an extraordinary collection right behind you.
anytime you're up this way, Dan, you're invited. This last hour has been absolutely fascinating. Thank you. My question is, as I'm sitting here sorting out cards for guys who played down the Cape League, have you scouted guys down there, or have you gone to games? What do you think? I go to about 20 a year. I love it.
My favorite place in North America is the Cape Cod League. Mark.
Which field?
I'd probably say Katuitt because I love the lighthouse, but I would be lying if I didn't say that, there's a taffy spot. That long red building in Yarmouth that has the taffy factory? Okay, I am addicted to taffy. I am so bad, okay? In fact, my better half always says, no, not that many, thank you. And there is a taffy factory and shop in South Yarmouth, maybe it's North Yarmouth, that I always went to and then found a way to get to the ballpark. I love the Cape. I love the Cape for what it's all about. I think the Cape and the Northwoods League are the best things about amateur baseball. But I remember taking one of my kids to the Bourne Braves and they were telling us all about their burgers. And, you think they're just hyping it. And then we had a Bourne burger and we went, oh yeah, this is really good. That's where I first saw Frank Thomas. That worked out pretty well 35 years later. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I remember the first day I saw him and I just went, oh my God, this is unbelievable. But Mark, the Cape for me, and I'm going to give up something. What I always tell my students, if you get a great job in baseball, your job is to hire me as your Cape Cod League scout towards the end of my career, when I can just sit at the ballpark at whichever of the teams and just sit there and enjoy the heck out of baseball in that wonderful environment and pretend like I'm working. I love seafood. I don't like shellfish, but Mark, you know that if you want to eat, play golf, and watch baseball and enjoy people, there is no better place on this planet than the Cape Cod League in the summertime.
I went to the finals this year. It was in Bourne. It was best of 3.
Yeah.
In the third game, was standing room only there. They bust you in from the ice rink down the street. It was insane.
It's an incredible experience. I encourage everybody in SABR to go there at some point and go to the Cape. And it is so grassroots, pure baseball. And Mark, you know, you get to see some of the best players in the country before anybody knows about them. And you get to see them grow up a little bit in front of you, which is just a fascinating experience. And the best part of it are the relationships from the host families and from the fans of the teams with that big leaguer throughout their big league career. It's unlike anything in the game.
I was in Harwich one time, and this kid, I was standing next, and he tapped on somebody's shoulder, and it was his host family from 12 years prior. And he brought his wife back with his kid just to meet him. It was really cool. Really cool.
It's amazing. The Northwoods League and the Cape are actually just therapy for me, because you go there and people just genuinely love the game. They're still innocent, and both leagues do a phenomenal job just putting that platform the way it is. But Mark, seriously, your background absolutely rocks. That is ridiculously cool.
You have an invitation, Dan, anytime.
I love it. Even when you're not home?
Sure. My wife, yeah.
There have been a couple of comments about how SABR, the fact that these Zoom opportunities exist is just amazing. And before we say goodbye to Dan and give him a huge thank you, I want to remind people that we have some in-person events coming up that I'll just mention very quickly, but I want to really focus on this idea of the virtual options that exist in SABR. So January 25th, we've got, there's a baseball card presentation and show. The baseball card presentation is titled The Incubator of Baseball. And just very roughly speaking, it's going to be about how baseball grew in New Jersey, and that story is going to be told through baseball cards. Ralph Carhart's giving that presentation. I'll be emailing more about that in the next few days, hopefully. So that's January 25th at the Muth. Then virtual presentation entitled Thomas Edison Didn't Invent Baseball, But, with J.B. Mannheim and Lawrence Knorr, coming up on February 5th. SABR Day tribute to Larry Doby. I'm really excited about this, coming up at the Muth Museum of Hinchliffe Stadium on February 8th. Reservations are required for that because the space only holds about 100. And this event, like all others, is open to SABR members and non-members alike. So if you're interested in attending, please call or email the Muth Museum and get that reservation in. Our guests that day are going to be, we're doing a film screening of a Larry Doby documentary, followed by a panel discussion with Luke Eplin, Joe Moore, and Claire Smith, moderated by Dave Kaplan. And then, speaking of the SABR virtual world, and Dan, I'm sure you've got a couple of suggestions to add to this list. I just want to highlight January 22nd, the Rocky Mountain chapter is hosting Denny McLean. That's going to be bonkers amazing. February 1st, SABR Day. You can spend the day traveling the country virtually. I've done it every year that I've been a SABR member, and it's an absolute blast. And it's why we're not having our SABR Day event on February 1st, because I wanted people to have the opportunity to travel the country. A couple of big things happening that day. Clyde Sukeforth chapter is going to have Vanessa Ivy Rose. That's only one of their offerings for the day. She's going to be there talking about her grandfather, Turkey Stearns. The Halsey Hall chapter is going to have Zach Ford on talking about Called Up, ball players becoming major leaguers. That's Zach's great book. And then the Lefty O'Doul chapter is going to have John Leonidakis on, sharing news on his Lefty O'Doul documentary and a project to restore O'Doul's gravesite. That doesn't even scratch the surface of what the offerings are. Dan, what else jumps out for you?
Well, I mean, I'm going to self-promote and then I'm going to make a comment, Donna. Monday, the 10th of February, we're going to do a SABR Scholars quarterly session where Tyrone Brooks, who's Major League Baseball's diversity and inclusion director and a 25-year friend of mine, and I are going to talk about opportunities within the game, the baseball, the SABR Analytics Conference, and how to get into the game. If any of you are interested, you have kids or grandkids that are interested, I encourage you. It's going to be a lot of information. It's going to be a way to kind of some of the shortcuts to get into the game. But Donna, now I'm going to put on my SABR board hat, but at the same time, I can never take off my love of SABR hat. For everybody, my dad gave me a SABR membership a year before I started in baseball. Gave it to me as a graduation gift out of high school. I'm obsessed with the history of the game. I just love it. I play Immaculate Grid every single day. It's stupid how early I get up to play it, and two of my best friends and I compete. But here's the advice I want to give to all of you. I think too many people are very regionalized and very parochial in their use of SABR. And what I love about SABR is what I call the baseball buffet. We have almost 40 committees, and I don't like all the content in all 40. I'm not going to say which I don't like as much because I'm a board member, but there's some things I gravitate to, and there's some things I tolerate, and there's other things that I try to learn more about. What I love is with the advent of the virtuals is you can sit and attend other people's meetings. They do all the work for you. You sit and listen. And folks, I dabble all the time. I do this all the time where I jump in, and I don't jump in as a board member. I jump in as a baseball lover, and I want to learn more things like Donna's stuff, Bruce's stuff. If I can't do it live, I listen to it later. And what I love about it as a SABR member, not a board member, as a SABR consumer, I can dabble in so many things that I can't imagine that I could do. And what I want to encourage you is get your money's worth, get your membership's worth, go on This Week in SABR. I don't know if you know this, but you can get emails from other chapters just by joining their chapter, not as a primary member, but as a member. And then you suddenly get the Los Angeles chapter, you get the Portland chapter, you get the Miami chapter, you get the Elysian Fields chapter. And you know what? If only 5% of it is of interest, listen, if you get to see something like I love baseball cards. I mean, I have a pile of baseball cards over here that I'm looking through as for fun. And I try to listen to the baseball card stuff with Jason Schwartz and people like Mark because I have fun. And I think so many members think they have to be kind of pigeonholed into their region. Not at all. In fact, that can only be a segment of your group if you want it to be. Explore like crazy, because I think then you're not only going to get your money's worth, but you're really going to have a chance to get whatever you want in baseball, for whatever it is. And, listen, if you're a Negro League fan, if you're a fan of the New York Giants, you're a fan of the Brooklyn Dodgers, you're a fan of Texas baseball, those things are all out there. And I encourage you to like for me, a buffet is like dangerous because I always put too much on my plate. And being the middle class kid that I am, I always finish it. So I'm like, I look at it and go, okay, I can learn about this and be in my sweats and a hoodie. Heck yeah, let's go. So I encourage you to do that because to me, that's the best part about our organization. We're a bunch of baseball nerds who like so many different things. And if it's only one ridiculously strange thing in our organization, it's totally cool. You can be the most obscure subject in baseball and you've got your peeps in this organization. And I think that's pretty cool.
Very, very well said.
If I took the liberty of unmuting myself just to say, and this is particularly advantageous for people who, for reasons of health or travel or a number of reasons, could not otherwise participate in SABR activities.
Yeah,
Thank
and I
you.
think this is Scott Bush and Scott Carter just elevating, but also some great chapter leaders who have original thoughts, and people like Bruce and Donna who bring people to the table to just elevate and heighten and enlighten you in an area that ordinarily you wouldn't have. And I'm one of them. I love it. And my better half always says, what are you listening to? And I tell her, and she goes, I bet you love that. I do. It's really cool. And I can be mindless. I can just sit there and eat beef jerky and drink a Diet Coke and hear it and turn it off. And it's like, okay, that was fun.
Well, thank you, Dan, for making yourself available, because without the guests, these virtuals, I don't want to say would be boring because we could always get creative, but it's always nice to be able to go outside of our region and get perspectives from other people from different walks and different experiences in the game. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for what you do on the board to help SABR be the best that it can possibly be. Thank you everybody for taking the time to be with us tonight. Thank you to all of you who are going to watch this later on a recording. If you like what you see, sign up for our mailings, and hope to see you all again real soon. Have a great night, everybody.